Hello all, this is James Johnson, aka Sulfurblade, and I am here in Fishing Planet, Florida Everglades, and we're going to be going after some largemouth bass today. Now this is not really an informative video, this is just a video just to, do a video. Obviously I'll be posting it as a largemouth bass video because that's exactly what it's going to be. We're going to be catching a lot of largemouth bass. This, if anything, it's a guide video to show you how to make money once you move past making money in Emerald Lake and walleyes. So kind of the next step up from catching walleyes for money is catching largemouth bass in Emerald Lake for money. And this is my setup that I'm using. I'm using an Aurora rod, which has a line weight of 3 to 10. I'm using 10-pound braid, and then I'm using the Aspira MLR 2000, which has a max drag of 11 pounds, so slightly higher than the 10-pound line, and can use up to 10-pound braid. So this is not overpowered equipment. If anything, this equipment is right on the money for fishing bass here at the Everglades. The only problem is every now and then you might pull into a trophy, and you're going to have yourself a really nice fight with trophy bass. But most bass are going to come in relatively easy. So let's go ahead and just jump in. Oh, I am using a popper. It is a relatively bright day, so I'm using a bright popper. It's a half-ounce 2.0. And I like to cast right in here. That's the problem with top baits. Every now and then that happens. I don't know if you saw it, but had a fish on temporarily, didn't really get an opportunity to get the hook set in it. And then sometimes it works out like that. It's not a huge largemouth, but still it's money. And these largemouth add up to a lot of money. And quite fast. Go. And as with any fish, you want to keep your line nice and tight. There's a nice trophy there. Well, not a nice trophy, that's actually a relatively small one. Still, it's money. So as I was saying, you want to keep your line tight. If the fish is running to the right, you want to pull to the left. And if the fish is running to the left, you want to pull to the right. Keep that rod tip high and wear them out. there's a snag that you just want to pull over. So yeah, it's a good spot right in there. Another decent spot is right along this side of things. Damn it, that was 2 strikes on this retrieve that we didn't capitalize on. Yep, I hooked a snag here. So yeah, with snags, you just want to carefully ramp up the tension, but avoid going into the red, and then just carefully move up the drag until it gets out. But if you're fishing here in Everglades, you probably figured out how to deal with snags by this point in time. There we go. This spot's typically a little more productive for me than the spot behind me. But I like to alternate back and forth between them to keep them all active. And we are not in best peak hour, but honestly, with the bass here at the Everglades, they bite pretty much any time, all day long. the rod tip high and pull back to the opposite direction he's running. So the fact that he's running is telling me he's a trophy. Yep, little 6-pound trophy. But it's all money, and that's what matters. Honestly, I'm here right now working myself up some funds to get a new rod setup, rod and reel, that I plan to be using on St. Croix here in the future. Muskie. That's my dream fish, really. In real life and in game, I'm all about the muskie. I'm from northern Wisconsin, and in northern Wisconsin, there's eaten fish like walleye and panfish, crappie, whatever. There's largemouth bass, which are fun to catch, release them, and then there's muskie, which is just it's the king of the sport fish, really. Um, it's the fish that causes all of the fish stories. It's the fish people, dream about. The king of all the fish, and well, honestly, I'm a little sad as to how they are implemented here in Fishing Planet and in most fishing games in general. Um, Granted, muskie is a very, I suppose, regional fish, but for most fishermen in North America, uh, if they're big into fishing, they will travel to come fish muskie. Muskie is kind of like the creme de la creme of sport fishing in North America. It's kind of like going to the ocean to catch a marlin. You'll go to the Midwest to try to catch yourself a muskie. And well, it almost feels like muskie is an afterthought here in the game. I mean, yes, you can catch some nice muskie, and that's all fun and everything. But it feels like they've given the northern pike more love and the walleye more love than they have the muskie. When you see the videos online, you don't see the title "Muskie Fishing in St. Croix." You see the title "Northern Fishing for Money in St. Croix," or "Trying to get a unique walleye in St. Croix," or "Blue catfish in St. Croix." But the fish that really, for me, is the hallmark and centerpiece of St. Croix doesn't even make it into the videos. And that's sad. But you can bet that I will be doing a fair share of musky videos in St. Croix. Actually, I would love if Fishing Planet was to add a new higher level map. something like the turtle flambeau flowage or the Chippewa flowage in Wisconsin. Those are two of the greatest lakes of all time for fishing, as far as I'm concerned. And well, especially the Chippewa. The Chippewa is the home of like the top five largest walleye or muskies of all time, and it's a huge lake, man. The Chippewa flowage would give your bass boat something to do. I mean, uh, if they were to properly model the Chippewa flowage, you could drive all day long on your bass boat just to go somewhere. Yeah, I'd like to see that, and with a focus on catching trophy and giant muskie that are like double the size of the muskie you catch in St. Croix. And why not? They've already set a precedent for it. You know, the northern in St. Croix generally are double or triple the size of New York. And it's not like 60 pound muskie is not unheard of. You know, the world record is what, 69 pounds? And that's only the world record because that was the one that was able to be caught. There are muskie all over northern Wisconsin. I've personally seen them with my own eyes that are bigger than the world record, but it's just it. How do you land these fish? And most fishermen are not prepared to try to catch a muskie, and then to catch a muskie in a way that's legit for line for getting the record in and of itself. Um, yeah, that's a whole new experience, man. When you're coming across fish that are the size of the ocean fish and act like an ocean fish. I've seen so many people have bad experiences with muskie. Boats pulled out to the center of the lake like they're being powered by an Evinrude outboard motor or something, um, and the fish will go straight down once they get to the center of the lake. Either snap the rod, snap the line, or snap both. And these are people that are actually fishing for muskie too that end up in that experience because generally most of your muskie equipment will land, what we think of as being a big muskie. uh, the 60-pound muskie is very catchable with most equipment, but when you catch those muskies that are bigger, and I do say that there's a lot of muskies that dwarf the world records out there. um, they're just so big that they're not catchable. I remember one particular. I've had so many experiences trying to catch a particular muskie in a lake I grew up on. I tried netting it with a specially designed net just for muskie, and the net bent over like a banana under the weight. It it couldn't it couldn't withstand the weight of the fish. Uh, and then during the process of trying to pull the net up, while it was bending over like a banana, the fish decided he was just going to go straight through the net. And this was a net designed specifically for muskie. And he busted through the net like it wasn't even there. And this was, a double lined net completely designed for catching big muskie. And it didn't stand a chance. So then we tried to gaff, using a gaff hook to catch this muskie. And I was maybe 13, 14 at the time. I was still a strong kid. I grew up, chopping wood and doing lots of manual labor. I was a hefty 160-pound, muscle-bound farm boy, basically. And yeah, I slipped that gaff onto that muskie. I went to try to pull him in. I ended up getting pulled into the lake by the muskie. He took me about 15 feet in the water before the gaff hook slipped out. Talk about an embarrassing experience. Have you ever heard anyone say that they got pulled into the lake by the fish? I did. But yeah, I truly think that muskie is like the I'd love to see a who's that guy that does the river monsters? I'd like to see him come to the Midwest to some of these and try to catch some of these huge muskie that I know exist, but you just can't catch them. And yeah, muskies, man, they are powerful fish. They're. Is anyone familiar with bluegill? How bluegill can. They're this tiny little panfish that can still manage to make your boat move. They've got so much power packed into such a little body. Well, muskie is this huge bodied fish that has like the power of a bluegill. So, you know, when you make that combination come together, it's dangerous. And I don't think this game even remotely models or gives justice to muskie. When you got a fish that powerful and that large, most of the gear that I've seen people using in videos and stuff just, yeah, it works for the plain chain muskies that are, 40, 50 inches long and are similar to like being a big northern pike. But when you get that big, big, big trophy muskie on, but then again, the game doesn't really portray the trophy muskie the way the trophy muskies are in real life, because the trophy muskies, as I've said in real life, are the ones that just can't be caught. But yeah, I'll stop talking now. I'm probably making myself look like a nut job on the internet, but if you're from Wisconsin, you might have some idea of what I'm talking about. Or even Minnesota, or possibly Ontario, Canada. They have a lot of big muskie up there, or the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. Ubers know a little bit, know a thing or two about muskie. But yeah, that is the one fish I would love to see get some love in this game. But that's basically why I'm here. I'm here to farm money to put together a nice casting rod setup with a heavy casting reel, heavy casting rod for going out and catching the big muskie. that snake again. So yeah, just walk up the tension dot. Release it. I do get a kick out of the game's version of bass equipment. Uh, I'm using right now is about what I would use in real life, except I wouldn't be using a spinning rod. Or not a spinning rod, but a spinning reel. I wouldn't be using a spinning reel. I hate spinning reels. Um, I prefer a good, um, well-made, expensive, closed-face reel. And by expensive, I just mean well-made. So, uh, as time goes on right now, it's hard to get closed face reels that are worth crap because the fishing community as a whole is getting, I don't know, enamored with the spinning reels. But I hate spinning reels. It's just I don't want to reel with the wrong hand. Um, Casting with a spinning reel just feels awkward. And I get a lot of bird's nests with spinning reels. I'm just not a fan of them in general. Whereas closed face, I can get nearly the same performance as a spinning reel. If you get a decent closed face, this is true. Um, but that's just the problem. There's not a whole lot of good closed face reel manufacturers anymore that design them well. You get a lot of this plastic crap that you could put on the end of a jig pole these days. But Zebco generally still will get you some decent closed face reels. And yeah, a heavier closed face reel with 10-pound line on it, and bang, you got yourself a bass pole, man. You don't. The game portrays bass fishing, well, I suppose kind of like tournament bass fishing. You know, if you're watching TV and you're watching these guys fishing bass on TV, they are using rather huge equipment, and that's to be understandable because they're on a timetable. They need to winch that fish in fast, and it's not like bass are smart fish. Bass are, how do I put it? Bass are some of the dumbest fish there are, and at the same time they can be a little frustrating. Like you could see the bass laying in the shallow water. You could throw every bait in your tackle box at it, and he just looks at it, doesn't care. And then you happen to grab that one bait that you never thought he would care about that has a broken hook, chipped paint, a busted lip. I mean, this bait's seen better days. It's like a floating J7 Rapala or something like that that's from 1960. And yeah, as soon as the bait hits the water, the bass just explodes and grabs it. And you're just like, what the? Why? Why does he like that bait? But yeah, that's how bass are. Bass are just a very strange fish, but by and large, bass are very active fish. They're very aggressive fish. If you throw enough times at them, they will attack your bait just because they're tired of seeing it. Um, and God, are they fun to play with and fight. Uh, but yeah, you can use uh, the same type of equipment that I would use to go muskie fishing to catch bass because bass have such huge mouths, well at least large mouths, right? That they could grab a bucktail, they could grab any type of bait that you would use for fishing muskie without much of a problem. And oftentimes when you were muskie fishing, you do in fact catch bass. So there's that. So it doesn't surprise me that professional bass fishermen that you see on TV use this really overpowered equipment, but by and large, a 10-pound test pole, 10-pound test line is more than adequate to catch just about any bass in existence. Yeah, that's kind of my feelings on that topic. So I sometimes, I'll oftentimes come here with a, a rod. It's the, what is it, 8 foot 6 inch value cast instead of the current rod I'm using. It's got an upper limit of like 7.5 pound test instead of 10 pound test. So this setup I'm using right here is, well, more matched for the line. That rod though, the one I'm talking about, is just a wonderful rod for casting. Like in this particular instance, when I'm casting this direction here, with that rod, I can go like all the way back to that shoreline behind. The problem with that setup though is that you're casting 10-pound line on a 7.5 pound strength rod, and so the rod does take a fair amount of wear and tear. And when you get a trophy largemouth, like, you know, a 7+ pounder, you got yourself one heck of a fight, and the rod takes a lot of wear and tear again. But I'm kind of I'm torn. I'm torn between using this the proper pull, and what I mean by proper pull is you want to you always want your line to be the weakest link. You generally don't want your rod or your reel to be the strongest link, because that means if you max tension, the damage is going to be applied to the weakest link, and that would be, in my instance when I'm using that particular pole, the rod itself, not the line. But it is a lower end rod, and because it's a lower end rod, it's actually not that expensive to repair. And so getting the wear and tear on it isn't really that big of a deal. In fact, I'm starting to think that I prefer having that extra casting power to get back there, because there's a lot of bass sitting on the other side of that point. I'll pull in a lot of bass farther down yonder that way that I can't quite reach with this current setup. So yeah, be aware that that option exists in the game, that you can use that pole that's not quite designed for 10-pound line and for this particular setup, but it will work. It will work really good. You just have to be careful not to bust your rod. And also, the other thing I like about that particular pole I'll use it a lot for trout. So I will, like when I go to Rocky or to Falcon Lake, because generally, you know, those particular lakes, you're not going to find many trout over like past 5 pounds, unless you land a unique or something. And so that pull is really effective on those lakes, and it gives you that added casting power, and also gives you the added weight range to cast from 1/4 all the way up to 3/4 ounce equipment. This particular rod uh, limits you to 1/2 to 3/4 ounce, so it's got a smaller weight range. And so that's another reason I like that weaker rod, is because you get a larger weight range to cast with it. Yeah, but however, when you're farming largemouth like this and you're just wanting to reef them in quicker, it's probably better off to go with the matched rod. Or if you have access to the high-end gear, I think there's that yellow counselor casting reel with one of the high-end casting rods. You can, do it like the professional bass fishermen do, and it just reef them in, horse them in, no play at all. Damn it. I feel like I haven't caught a fish in a little bit. The peacock bass. So I won't throw them away, but they are not quite as good of money as largemouth. And another thing about farming here, rather than farming an emerald, is I think it's more fun to catch the bass than to catch the walleye. I mean, sure, walleye aren't exactly boring. Other peacock. I don't know. Bass like to dance around more, and the walleye is just the same. Cast out towards the tree, wait for your your narrow spoon to drop down bottom, do the stop and go retrieve. But I suppose if I do enough popping with the popper, that this will get just as boring as doing the narrow spoon gets. What could I tell you guys about? Um, Maybe talk about some real life fishing. Some of the basics, if you will. Like, for some reason, the old saying, when the wind's from the west, fish bite the best. When the wind's from the east, the fish bite the least. When the wind's from the south... What is a Florida gar? What? 6 pounds. It's not weight efficient, but I'm going to keep it anyway. I just caught a gar on a popper. I'm kind of in shock right now. I mean, yeah, gar do tend to, what's the word? They're usually suspended up high and eating towards the top, so I guess it's not that far of a reach to get one on a popper. But just wasn't quite expecting it. Anyway, I was talking about the old fishing saying: when the wind's from the west, the fish bite the best. When the wind's from the east, the fish bite the least. When the wind's from the south, the bait falls in the mouth. And when the wind's from the north, the fishermen go forth. And kind of what that saying means is, west wind is the best wind, with south being the next best, north still being fishable, and east you might as well not even bother going fishing. Of course, this saying I think is a North American saying. I don't know how relevant it is in Europe or other parts of the world, but there is some actual science behind it in North America, and generally westerly winds come along with certain types of jet streams and currents and barometer pressures. And so all those things, the weather is very much a huge factor in fishing. And if you wanted to simplify it, you're generally going to have a favorable barometer when the wind's from the west in North America. So that's just a simplistic way of being able to tell if it's a good day to fish by which direction the wind is from. Another sailing that the sun is reminding me of right now, looking at it, is Pink Skies at Night, Sailor's Delight. Pink Skies in the morning, sailors take warning. So that doesn't necessarily help you with fishing to the extent of, if you see pink skies in the morning when you're fishing, you may want to bring an umbrella or at least be prepared to move off the lake in the case of a thunderstorm. I don't know. Fishing Planet's not a bad game. I've kind of gotten myself back into it here because some of my friends are playing it. But I had stopped playing Fishing Planet for a mid-time period because, well, I wasn't happy with some of the choices that they made early on a few years back. They kind of changed focuses, if you will, from being a friendly development team that seemed focused on making a great game to becoming a development team that seemed very focused on making money. And now, granted, you know, game developers most certainly need to make money on their product. You know, it's a job after all, and they're trying to feed their kids. But it really seemed, at least early on, that the game shifted gears dramatically. Um, from a yeah, I don't know. I kind of don't want to bring up the old memories, but yeah, I stopped playing the game for quite a period of time because basically I was a little angry with some of the decisions that they made. They did some rebalancing of DLC equipment and you know, some of that stuff was just wasn't kosher as far as I was concerned. You know, especially the DLC stuff that people spent real money on and then getting rebalanced and new DLCs being brought out to in their place to basically replace the stuff that they basically nerfed. But yeah, I digress. Otherwise, the game has come quite a ways. There is a ton of new locations to fish, new fish to catch. Um, the, the the balance that they have right now for for making money on a non-premium account seems just about right for the most part. I feel like they've worked the game balance to pretty much the right point. The point to where, if you want to play for free, you're going to be able to do it, but you're most certainly going to be tempted by that premium. And so, yeah, I'm pretty happy with where they've had the game balance right now. It wasn't always, well, balanced, if you will. But for a fishing game, it's probably the best one out right now. I've tried some of the other fishing games, and that's actually part of the reason I'm here fishing. Fishing Planet is just, it was like, I kept saying to myself, this game just isn't as good as Fishing Planet. And so, yeah. Alright, this feels like a decent sized one. Hopefully it's not a peacock. It's a large one. Not bad. And I love these new topwater baits. Oh, I'm just adore them. Popper really seems to have a home here. The popper just brings in the bass left and right here. But in other places, the walker. Oh, I have so much luck with walker in so many locations. I think generally I prefer the walker to the popper, just for productivity across all lakes. But in this particular location, the popper really shines. Kind of hard though when you get those short follows with the popper. If you're using a spoon or something like that, it's a lot easier to get the short follows. But the popper, you almost need a little bit of distance to get the pop right. fast forward here. After this cast, I'm gonna check the peak chart. Though, how much weight do I have in the net? 85 of 110. It might have too much weight to fast forward. There's that snag. That one always gets me. There we go. Another trophy. Another one. So, you saw I missed another one there. What you have to do with those guys is not set the hook. I know it seems counterintuitive. What you want to do is just take up line and reel in until you have a taut line again, and then set the hook. But you get in this rhythm of popping, and of course you're using the set the hook button for popping, and so you end up pulling the bait basically away from the fish. If you can see that you need to not pop, oh, wonderful cast. Nobody saw that. Didn't happen. If you can see that you need to not pop and just take up line, then you can oftentimes land that fish. fish really spit the bait quite a ways, didn't he? I prefer not to cast in this location because a lot of times you'll end up getting the peacocks. But yeah, when your normal spots aren't biting, you might as well get a peacock. I mean, the more fish you pull in, the faster, the more money you're gonna make. Having dead time without a fish on your line doesn't help you much. And that's a key. Well, trophy, not bad. This will probably be another peacock. Alright, we got room for one more fish. Let's get a trophy largemouth in there to fill up. And there we go, trophy largemouth on command. Woohoo! To end our session, we now have a full stringer. That didn't take too long. Let's go ahead and check the Fishkeeper net. We got 7,904, so almost 8,000. I'm not premium. I'm just a plain chain free free fisher person, if you will, and I don't have the biggest keep net in the world. My keep net is this stringer here that's 110 pound, 33 pound max fish. Not a bad stringer. It's done me well so far for what I've done. So I'm gonna be basically bringing in about 8,000 here, and of course it's gonna cost 1,000 to extend the day. So I actually made what 6,900. There's 1,000 to extend. Fish are sold. And that is basically farming bass at Florida. Um, it's a little different than doing the walleye farming in Emerald Lake. It's possibly more entertaining, possibly faster, possibly better money. I don't know, questionable. It's more expensive to come here to Emerald, that's for sure. Or not Emerald, but to come to Florida, to the Everglades. This is a more expensive trip. And to be honest, I think the bass are probably a bit faster than the walleye. Though the walleye do have the advantage of that cheaper trip to go there to catch them. So they may work out to almost be about the same. But if you're tired of the scenery in Emerald Lake and you want to look at something different, come on here and do some bass fishing at the Everglades. Anyway, I'm James Johnson, aka Sulfurblade. This is my content. Hopefully you're enjoying it. If so, leave a like and subscribe. And until the next time, all, peace.